Hello everyone. Quite a number of you would have heard the claim that South Korea's economic success is largely due to free market capitalism. Indeed, in 1983, Ronald Reagan said to the members of the South Korean National Assembly that their country's economic success was due to having a free economic system. As Reagan was uttering these words, South Korea was implementing its fifth five-year economic and social development plan. To add to this, there was extensive state ownership in key strategic areas of the economy. Now it is clear that Reagan was of course wrong when he claimed South Korea had a free economic system. So what kind of system was it then? Was it socialist? Definitely not. It was not even social democratic. It was state-directed capitalism, an economic system that had been favored previously in Imperial Japan and adopted by other Asian tigers, such as Taiwan. Keep in mind, between 1961 and 1993, South Korea was governed by a succession of military dictatorships, so such an economic system suited that country well since it was a top-down command structure. So in South Korea, the state headed by a military dictator told private capitalists what kind of factories were to be built and where. However, in exchange, the state would provide these same capitalists with massive state support in the form of subsidies and monopoly privileges over certain areas of the South Korean domestic market. What also helped the owners of these massive conglomerates was the state's repression of workers' rights, which allowed these companies to make higher profits.
Wages were kept down. Free trade unions couldn't operate. In thousands of noisy, ill-ventilated sweatshops, Korean workers toiled long hours a day making shoes, textiles or wigs for export. At the age of 18, Yi Chung-kak went to work in a textile mill in Incheon.
The first day I got there, the moment I saw the conditions, I thought this is hell. That's the first impression I had. There were huge machines as big as houses, and there were a lot of them. There was so much noise you couldn't hear anything. We pulled thread out of cotton, which created so much dust we couldn't see each other. This was hell, and I felt really bottled up inside.
When they tried to start their own union, the women were harassed by the management, which paid men to wait for them, armed with buckets from the latrines.
The men brought in buckets full of excrement and said, "Let's see if you're going to vote, you women." And so you can see they've thrown it everywhere here. The workers would come into the office to vote, and they said, "Why don't you try some shit?"
The union collapsed, the women were fired, and their leaders beaten up or tortured by police.
So workers who disrupted the economic plan in both state and private enterprises were to be brutally punished. It should be noted that South Korean dictator Park Chung-hee was a big supporter of class collaboration and believed that everyone should work towards the same goal. Anyone who disrupted this plan was to be imprisoned and sometimes even killed. The South Korean example also shows that state ownership within a capitalist economy is not socialist at all. For example, when Park Chung-hee came to power in 1961, the first thing he did was to nationalize the banking system. Now, was this a step towards socialism? No, it was actually done to help the growth of private businesses. These banks were nationalized so they could give low-interest loans to massive private companies in order to help them grow. Furthermore, other state-owned companies played a similar role. For example, Poryang Steelworks was used to provide steel for domestic companies at below export prices. Therefore, these state-owned companies and industries were there to help the growth of private capitalism. So the economic system in South Korea consisted of a strict hierarchy just like you would see in the army. At the top there was the general who gave orders. His orders would then be delivered to the Economic Planning Board, who would then pass them on to both the state-owned and privately owned companies, who would carry these orders out. Basically, both capitalists and workers were the foot soldiers who carried out the government's plans. Therefore, we can say that the South Korean example breaks a number of myths. First myth being that nationalization and government intervention always leads to socialism. In the South Korean case, it helped the growth of private capitalism. The second myth is that South Korea's economic advancement was due to free market capitalism. Now this claim is the most deceitful of all. The South Korean capitalist economy had far more in common with the economies of Imperial Japan, the Third Reich, Chiang Kai-shek's Taiwan, and Deng Xiaoping's China. Basically, state-directed, monopolistic capitalism. And of course, right-wingers and libertarians also agree that South Korea was a capitalist country despite its statist history. It's a shame that they are far too dishonest to admit that other countries that adopted the same economic system were capitalists as well.